Hey skaters, today we're going to be taking apart the front wheel of my Backfire Ranger X1 skateboard to see a little bit about the construction of the wheel, as well as checking the bearings to make sure that they rotate correctly and maybe get a better idea of how the tread is mounted on the wheel. I'm going to start with a 14mm socket on my impact wrench. That seems to be the correct size to get the nut off of the axle. A lot of these nuts were really tight from the factory, so it took quite a bit of force to get them off. But they come off pretty easy after you've done it once or twice. Once you've done that, you can just slide the wheel right off. You'll notice that there's a square part of the truck right there, which aligns into the axle of the wheel, so you always know which way to put your wheel on if you take it back off. The next thing to do is to use a Torx bit to remove these 7 screws that are on the front of the wheel. Turns out that this is a T15 bit that I'm using. These are pretty easy to strip, so go nice and easy, especially if you're using an impact. Looks like there's Loctite on here too, so it might take a little bit of work to get them to break free that first time you do it. All right, once we've got all the screws out of the wheel cover, you can work to remove it. There's a couple different ways you can do it. You can take something flat like a screwdriver and kind of pry it out from between the rubber, and then once you get it loose, you can actually push on the back side of the, I'm not really sure what you call this, but I'm going to call it the axle inside the wheel there, and it'll eventually just push out. And then once it pushes out, you'll have the axle here with the square side, and then you can just pull it right out. And you'll notice there's like a little spring washer type thing that goes right on here. And I think what that does, it's bent, so what I think it does is actually keeps a little tension there when it presses up against the wheel, and so it keeps it, if you tighten it, it keeps it from locking up. So one of the reasons I wanted to take this wheel apart was to test the bearing, and so I can do that by just putting my finger on here and spinning the wheel. When the board came out of the box, felt like there was a lot of rolling resistance with the wheels, so I wanted to check to make sure that the bearings weren't damaged. So this was one of the best ways I could find to do that. So that one seems to spin pretty good. And this side also seems to spin really free. This one you'll notice will spin quite a bit more. There's a lot more mass on this, especially at the perimeter, so it's going to spin much more than the other wheel. Let's take a look here at the actual construction of the wheel. It looks like we've got another wheel cover here, just like before with the T15 Torx screws in there. And then on the other side here, we've got a bearing on the inside of the wheel, and then it looks like a CNC'd aluminum wheel here with the tire on the exterior of it. It's hard to see right here how the tire is attached. It almost looks like it isn't, and if I kind of move it around, it feels like it might be able to come off, so I'm guessing that's how we're going to be able to do different types of tires. It's just sliding this tire off, and then we should be able to put other tires on. I don't know if you can read this, but this bearing right here says 6005, R is in Romeo, S is in Sierra. So I haven't looked to see if there's any aftermarket replacement bearings this side. I'm sure there are, but that might be a possible upgrade for this board later on down the road. I did notice that bearing here on this side is a different size, and it says 6303, R is in Romeo, S is in Sierra. So again, possibly an upgrade. We could we could do to these wheels later on down the road. I'm sure these are aftermarket bearings, so they're pretty easy to find. One thing I did notice with this wheel is how heavy it is. I'm gonna reassemble it and put it on this scale here, and I'm gonna show you how heavy this is. Pretty tough to see, but it's about 3.4 pounds. And that's just one wheel. Once you're ready to reassemble your wheel, it's pretty simple. Take your, again, I'm gonna call it the axle. I'm not sure what it technically is called. There's only one way it'll go in because this side is smaller than the other side. So you put that in and make sure you got your little spring washer in there. And you can push it on. Then you take the other side. You can make sure that side goes into the bearing on the other side, like that. Then the last thing to do is to rotate this wheel so that it lines up with the screw holes, so you can screw the wheel cover back in. I tried to push this in a little bit to get it to seat inside of the wheel, or inside the tire. So it gets down pretty close, and then as you knock the screws in, it'll tighten it up. You might even hear a little bit of a pop as you get that final tightening, as the rubber tire gets seated correctly around that wheel cover. So you can see this one right here, that's only after tightening it and loosening it twice. It's already getting pretty close, so you just really want to go slow and take your time. There was the pop that I was talking about. It's just the wheel cover getting inside of the rubber tire. Okay, now that we've got the wheel reassembled, find the side with the square that fits onto the square part of the truck. Should go right on. Reattach your 14mm attachment for the nut. I like to start it by hand first to make sure I'm not cross-threading. Once it's on there, then I can tighten. Again, I'm in no big rush. There's a lot of resistance to tightening this, I've noticed. If you're using an impact, it'll start hammering it pretty much right away. It's easy to over-tighten. You can tell you've over-tightened it when you spin it and it hardly rolls. So if it feels like it's too tight, back it off a little bit. You can see it rolls a little much better now. The other thing is that you want to know if you over tighten it too much, you can feel the wheel moving back and forth. If you move it back and forth on the truck, that's no bueno. So you want to tighten it up slightly so that there's no motion. Once it's tight, it should spin nicely. It shouldn't have any play back and forth between the truck and the nut. And then you should be good to go. Hope this was helpful. See you later, skaters.